Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wind Down Wednesday, episode 36. So we are about 9 months into this process now, and I hope it's feeling comfortable for you. I hope you're enjoying these as much as I am, even when it's difficult and I get emotional. I really get so much out of this practice, so I thank you for joining me, whether you're watching live now, whether you watch the videos later, or you listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And then I wanted to make a quick announcement about my Exploring the Chakras course. I'm planning to offer it again. I'm in the last 3 weeks here of the current course, and we're having a great time. I'm learning a lot as we go, and it's such a great change to have some interaction. When I do these Wind Down Wednesdays, it feels sometimes like I'm just talking to myself. So if you're interested in joining the next Exploring the Chakras course, it's an 8-week course. It's $88. If you have to miss 1 or 2 classes, that's no problem because I can record it with Zoom and send you the Zoom link. And then I also share the slides that I present in class after the class, so you have access to all that information. I don't have my next date and time set up yet. You can subscribe to the website. It's paulataylorenergy.com. At the bottom of every page, there's a little place to subscribe, and I will be sending out an email with the dates and times. If you're interested and there are certain dates and times that work better for you, you can always contact me either here on Facebook or through the website. Okay, so I have a lot to say tonight. And I know for many of you, this is an hour later than usual, so bear with me. There's a point to all of this. It's all related, and we're going to have a really good meditation tonight. I can feel that. I feel every week that we have a good meditation, but sometimes I get a little special tingle, and I think this is going to be a really good one. So I'm going to be talking about breakthroughs, meeting yourself where you are, and spiritual processing. If you're not familiar with spiritual processing, I'm going to go into it a little bit, but you can learn more at my website. You can go and read the full blog post on paulataylorenergy.com. It's actually the most recent blog post, so it's the first one that shows up on the homepage. And that will give you some more in-depth understanding of what I'm talking about with spiritual processing. So I want to start by talking a little bit about breakthrough. So we can have a breakthrough at any point in that spiritual processing process. We can have a breakthrough in a lot of areas of our life. I'm talking specifically about spiritual, emotional breakthroughs, and especially when you're dealing with being triggered or with being in trauma, triggered by trauma. And I'm going to go into an example of this, but I want to give a little bit of background before I do that. So when we have a breakthrough, it's fantastic. In that moment, especially if we've been struggling for a while, we have a breakthrough and it's like, oh, yes. But even the word breakthrough kind of has some implications. There's a little bit of expectation that gets set up when we use that word and when we think that word to ourselves. We have a breakthrough, and then there's this expectation that maybe things will start accelerating in terms of our growth or letting go of that trauma. Maybe things will magically resolve now that we've had a breakthrough without us having to do any more work. These are the kind of expectations that can come up sometimes when we have a breakthrough. And this doesn't allow us space to meet ourselves where we are. And what I mean by that is best illustrated by how I learned that phrase, meeting yourself where you are, or meeting someone where they are. When I was in massage school, we were talking about interacting with clients, and our teacher said to us, you really need to meet people where you are. And the example of massage works really well because I think everyone can understand, even if you've never been in the situation. So when you come into a massage, sometimes you're coming straight from work, you're really stressed out, you're kind of in this fight, flight, or freeze mode. If the massage therapist comes out and says to you, hello, my name is Paula, and I'll be doing your massage today. And you're way up here, and they're already down here in this relaxed state and speaking really slowly, it can actually be off-putting to the person who's still in that adrenalinized state. So what we're trained to do in massage is to meet the client where they are or closer to where they are, and then you bring them down into that state of ease, into that state of relaxation. So you might approach the person and speak a little more quickly. You don't want to get yourself pulled into adrenaline fully, but that dichotomy, that split, that separation between where you are in a relaxed state and where the person came in, you're not meeting them where they are. And that might be off-putting. They might not respond well to you. They might not listen to you. They might have a feeling like this person has no idea where I'm coming from. Look at this, space cadet, or whatever they might think. So you bring yourself to the person's level and meet them. And then through the massage, you bring the person back down to your level where they are more grounded and more at ease and in that relaxation space. So that's what I mean by meeting someone where they are, or meeting yourself where you are. And I'm going to get into a little bit more of what I mean by that. I'm kind of defining my terms here before I get into that. What that does for us, meeting ourself where we are, it allows us to soften those judgments, those harsh judgments that we all make about ourselves, and to soften the expectations. So when you have a breakthrough, and you might have a hint that recently I had a breakthrough, and I'm going to talk more about that and go into detail. But so you have a breakthrough and you're like, oh yes, this is amazing. Everything's all resolved. Woo. And then maybe you wake up the next day and it's not so much that way. You still had the breakthrough, but you're kind of back to feeling, especially if you've been struggling for a long time. And we're going to talk a little bit about the physical implications of that as well. So meeting yourself where you are allows you to let go of that expectation rather than thinking, oh, I had this breakthrough and I thought everything was going to be great. It's like, oh, okay, here's where I am today. And you can soften that judgment. You can soften that expectation, and we can release the idea on the whole that breakthrough implies this magical resolution. It's still a process. And we're still growing. So even when we have a breakthrough, there's more work to be done. So spiritual processing, just very briefly, is a 3-step process that I talk about in that blog post for dealing with being triggered, and specifically being triggered by a traumatic event. And what usually happens is we get triggered, and this is what happened to me, and I'll explain it. We get triggered in the present by a traumatic event that happened to us in the past, until we work through that enough times that either we don't get triggered anymore, or we get triggered, we recognize it right away, and we're able to let it go. That's kind of the ultimate goal. So in spiritual processing, the first step is awareness. That's the first step of most spiritual practices is awareness. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that really means when I get into my example. The second step, once we get into awareness, then we go through mental processing. We have to understand in our brain what happened, maybe why we got triggered. That's all of that stuff. And the third step is the step that I feel like I was missing for years. And the reason I wrote the blog post is this emotional, physical, energetic processing. So allowing yourself to feel the emotions that come up, recognizing that emotions are stored in the physical body and have physical ramifications, and then allowing that to release in whatever way we have access to, letting it come up, letting ourselves express the emotion, doing some work maybe with someone else or on our own to energetically move that stagnant energy or that triggered energy so that we can get out of that triggered state. Okay, so my example, I feel like I don't know if I should have just gone into that right away, but this is how I designed the talk and this is how it's going. So I recently came into full awareness, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why I'm using the term full awareness, of the fact that I had been triggered about my miscarriages and infertility. And this had actually been going on kind of for months. And it would come up and I would go like, oh yeah, I see that. Well, meh. and then move on. I thought I was moving on. And then it would come up again and I would go, oh yeah, and move on. And what I realized when I finally stepped into this full spiritual awareness is that noticing something and then pushing it away is not awareness. That's actually denial. You noticed it, but you didn't continue into that full acknowledgement, the awareness that you're triggered, and then the processing of that trigger. Just looking at it and kind of pushing it, that's not really awareness. So I was going along kind of for months and recognizing at times, oh yeah, this is triggering. Oh yeah, this is triggering. And part of my issue was that I wasn't meeting myself where I was. I wasn't allowing myself to feel the emotions that I felt because I was judging them. So they weren't coming up authentically. They weren't being able to release because I was shoving them back down. And I finally, last week, stepped fully into awareness. I recognized, holy moly, I've been triggered this whole time, and it was getting worse, and there were physical signs that it was getting worse. And that's what happens when we don't have awareness. We can't fool our body. Our body knows that we're triggered. And so we start to have symptoms of that. We start to have symptoms that look a lot like depression and anxiety, lack of motivation, irritability, inability to follow through with things. And then we get physical symptoms that are associated with depression and anxiety that come from triggering. I had a migraine 2 weeks ago. It's only the fourth time that's ever happened in my life. So that kind of stuff starts coming up because we're not paying attention. We're not acknowledging. We're not aware of our triggering. We're not letting it come into the conscious mind. But the subconscious mind knows, and it's giving us these emotional signals and these symptoms. And then the body knows, and the body is giving us signals that we've been triggered. And the longer we go not acknowledging that, the more intense these signals get until we finally, like I did, go, oh, holy moly, I've been triggered this whole time and unaware of it. So I really had to acknowledge that I was triggered fully, and then acknowledge that the emotions that were coming with being triggered were okay for me to feel, even though I was judging myself about them. I had to let go of that a little bit. So I moved pretty quickly when I finally had this breakthrough, and that's a huge breakthrough. And that's why I said you can have breakthroughs at any point in this process. Realizing that you're triggered is a huge breakthrough, especially if you just spent months trying to ignore it. That's a huge breakthrough. But there's still a lot more work after that. So awareness is the first step, but it's not the last step. And sometimes we have to repeat all three of these steps over and over again. And that can be so daunting. That can get us to the point where I said to my husband, like, am I going to be 70 years old and dealing with this? Maybe, but at least I have the tools to deal with it when I'm being aware. So I moved from awareness into that mental processing pretty quickly. And then I moved pretty quickly into the emotional, energetic, physical processing. And I had a huge emotional release. And that stagnation kind of started to move for me. And then I fell into the trap of expectations. I had these 3 breakthroughs, bam, 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 within like a day and a half. And so then I started thinking, oh, well, this is all better now. I've done this work now. Why do I still feel unmotivated? Why do I still feel tired? Why do I still have a headache 2 weeks after my migraine? And one of the things that I want to say about that is really, really important. So again, our body knows what's happening. We can't lie to our body. And spending that period of time in a triggered state, especially if you have a history of any kind of chemical imbalance like depression or anxiety or any other mental, I don't like the word illness, mental imbalance, is really a chemical imbalance. The neurotransmitters in your brain, it's just like, I always compare it to, and I think I said this a few weeks ago, to type 1 diabetes. Your pancreas doesn't work, so you need insulin. So a lot of us, our neurotransmitters they're not balanced. They're not working quite right. And so when you spend all that time in a triggered state, that's more than enough to kick your neurotransmitters out of balance, even if they were balanced. And there's judgment that comes back in with that as well. Oh, I don't have, like in my case, I don't have dysthymia anymore. I'm over this. I don't need supplements, herbs, medication, whatever it is that I've used in the past. I can do this. I can get through this spiritually. And that might not be true. My body might need help getting through that, and that's okay. There's so much judgment that comes up with that too, and especially when you're dealing with trauma. I had something like 10 miscarriages. If that's not trauma, I don't know what is. And being triggered in that, even several years after the fact, absolutely has an effect on the body and the neurotransmitters. And it's okay to do whatever you need to do to bring yourself back into balance. As I said a few weeks ago, a spiritual path is about doing what's right for you in the moment, what's right for you now. Not what was right for you a year ago or what might be right for you in a year. Doing what you need, meeting yourself where you are with love and with acceptance. So meeting ourselves where we are allows us to flow in our process of growth, of healing, of spiritual processing, of trauma release, of dealing with mental health imbalances or issues. Meeting ourselves where we are brings us back into self-love. It lets us release our harsh judgments. It lets us stop saying, I can't have those emotions. That's not okay. They are what they are. The emotions are there. And the harder you try to push them down, the more signs you will get from your body and your mind and your emotional state that you need to let them out. You need to acknowledge them. You need to process, and then you need to move it through your body to fully release. And that's what spiritual processing is all about. So you might be wondering, what are we going to meditate on tonight? Because when this whole idea came to me, I wasn't sure where to go with it from the meditation, but meeting yourself where you are allows you to reconnect with your intuition. And so I was intuitively guided that our meditation tonight is going to be about meeting up with and receiving some guidance from our higher self. And I want to talk a little bit about what that means and a little bit about what we're going to do, and then we're going to jump into the meditation. So the term higher self, I hear that a lot. I see that thrown around, and I'm going to tell you what I think it is. And you might ask 10 other people and they might have 10 different explanations or definitions, but this is just what works for me. I feel like the higher self is, some people might call it the soul. Some people might call it your connection to the soul, because I really think the soul is in your physical body. And your higher self, to me, is in that spiritual realm. It's someone that you meet up with, or something that you meet up with that you want to be in flow with, you want to be on the same page with, you want to be open to your intuition and your calling, and your soul knows what you're here to do more than you do. Your higher self understands what your calling is, what you're here to accomplish. And the ego mind has no idea. So this is completely beyond the ego mind. It's objective in the way that we try to get when we do our meditations, but it's fully connected to that divine source that we are made of. It is of that divine source. It is the part of us that is the divine source that, of course, again, exists in the body, but is really helpful to consult as an outside party when you're looking for guidance, or sometimes when you just need a big hug. So we're going to go to our sanctuary. We're going to invite our higher self in. And this may show up for you in a lot of different ways. I actually see my higher self as a woman who I saw many years ago in a meditation I was guided into, that at the time I thought might have been a past life version of me, and might have been maybe the very first version of me. But now I see her as my higher self, and sometimes I get really angry at her. And that's the other thing. That's okay. When you're doing this spiritual work, it's okay to like give the finger to your higher self and be angry. It's okay to give the finger to God, to the divine, and be angry. I think we're taught that that's not okay. And that's part of that processing. If that comes up for you, let it come up for you. Don't judge yourself. And believe me, your higher self is not going anywhere. The divine is not going anywhere. That's one of the wonderful things about unconditional love. It's unconditional, truly unconditional. So let yourself explore in this meditation what comes to you. Maybe it's a person. Maybe it's just some guidance in whatever form that takes. Maybe it's a feeling. Maybe it's an animal. Maybe it comes in the form of a loved one. Maybe it comes just in impressions. So don't put limitations or expectations on how you meet your higher self or the form your higher self takes. Everyone is different. Everyone processes differently. Everyone connects differently. So just let that be organic. And the great thing about this meditation is that wherever you are in the spectrum of spiritual processing, totally not triggered and everything's great and expanded, recognizing that maybe you were triggered or are triggered about something, knowing that you're triggered and just trying to get through it, whether it's mentally or you're getting it into the body and the emotional space. This meditation is for you wherever you are, and you will receive useful information from your higher self, no matter what state you're in. And that's, I think, why I was guided to do this meditation. Be gentle with yourself. Let your judgment soften. Meet yourself where you are in this moment and be okay with it and be loving with it if you can. Let's start, as we always do, with 3 deep oxytocin breaths, breathing deeply into the belly and then sighing them out. I open to guidance. I open to love. I invite my higher self, and I receive love. Allow the top of your head to gently open. Let that beautiful, unconditional light of divine love and joy flow in through your head and your jaw and your neck, into your shoulders and your arms, wrists and hands. Allow this golden light of love to flow into your chest and your upper back, into your abdomen and mid-back, your low back and low belly. Let this joy and love and light flow into your hips and your pelvis, down into your thighs and knees. Let it flow into your lower legs and your ankles and your feet. Feel your body where it is connected with the earth, and allow that dark, supportive, fertile energy to flow up into your body through your feet or your bottom, whatever's connected to the ground. Let these energies mingle, this dark physical earth energy and this light spiritual energy of unconditional love. And then invite your energetic sanctuary to come to you. Bring your planet into your space. If you're unfamiliar with the energetic sanctuary, just picture the beautiful and safest place you can imagine. This is an entire planet that belongs to you, a realm with many areas to serve you in whatever way you need. And tonight we're going to go to that safest of points in our sanctuary. If you've met with guides or loved ones before, this is the area you want to be in. Notice what this looks like. Give yourself a sense of where you truly are. Look at the colors. Notice if there's a breeze on your face. Are you inside or outside? Is there a smell in the air? Let yourself come fully into this space. Let yourself be comfortable here. Remind yourself that everything that happens here is for your highest good. Nothing is allowed in this sanctuary that is not for your highest good. And then as you're ready, invite your higher self to come into this space with you. And then let yourself get quiet and notice what happens. Let yourself get acquainted with the feeling of your higher self. If you're seeing something visually, see what your higher self looks like. Feel emotionally what it's like to be in the presence of your soul, of your higher self, of your divine connection. Welcome your higher self into your space. And as you're ready, ask your higher self for guidance. Perhaps there's a specific situation you'd like to explore. Perhaps you're struggling and you just want to be held and loved. Perhaps you're feeling expansive and wondering what your next step in life is. Whatever you need in this moment as you meet yourself where you are is what your higher self is here to give you. And maybe she's here to take something from you. Maybe you've been carrying a burden and it's time to let that go. Maybe you have a gift to offer him. Whatever comes to you here, let your intuition guide you. Let yourself fully open up in the last few moments here, receiving any gifts from your higher self, letting go of anything or giving gifts in return. Again, noticing what it feels like to be fully connected to this part of yourself. Recognizing that this is not really a separate entity. This is the you are beyond that fear-based ego mind. This is the expansive, loving, divine part of yourself. And it is here to guide you when you are ready to accept that guidance. When you are ready to meet your higher self where it is. Knowing that our higher self always meets us where we are, with love and compassion. As you're ready, allow your higher self to return to wherever it belongs. Maybe it's staying in your sanctuary. Maybe it's staying here with you in your space for support. Maybe you release it back into the spiritual realms. Do whatever feels right in this moment. Allow your sanctuary to stay with you or let that go as well. And if you'd like, you can allow the top of your head to gently close or leave it open for the highest good. And one more time, let that unconditional love flow into your head and face. Let it come into your brain and soften those harsh self-judgments. Meet your brain where it is and send love to it for working so hard for you. Let this softening flow into the neck and throat, the shoulders and arms, the chest and upper back. Bring this self-love into the abdomen, into the low back and pelvis. Let this softening of expectations flow into your legs and knees, lower legs and feet. And for just a moment here, truly meet yourself where you are, recognizing that you are divine in all moments, in all areas of your physical, emotional, mental, and energetic space. All is divine energy. Affirm with me, I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body, and I allow myself to meet me where I am without judgment. I am fully present in my body, and I open to the guidance of my highest self. Sa Nam. As you're ready, you can wiggle your fingers and toes, circle your wrists and ankles if you'd like. Move your head and neck around. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Allow your highest self access to yourself, to your ego self, to your physical self. Build this connection, revisit this space for guidance and love. Allow your highest self to soften your judgments and recognize that this process is a series of breakthroughs. There's no expectations for you after you have a breakthrough. Just continued flow and softening. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesday.